Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Futurecast. My name is Jake Ranson. We have an excellent episode for you tonight. Tonight, we're going to be talking all about what it means to be pro-life. Going to be talking all about abortion. That's right. Uncomfortable subject for sure, but a subject that we absolutely have to dive into. Um, so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to be talking all about all the different pregnancy circumstances. We're going to be talking about why people are pro-choice, and a lot we'll be talking about tonight is the shocking state of the pro-life movement. How many people are not where they should be? And I'll elaborate as the episode goes on. But I think it'll be a good episode. Trying out a new mic. Finally hooked up the microphone for this episode. It's a little less hot in here, which is nice. A little less hot. I don't know. I'm feeling the Halloween blues. I don't know. I've just really been feeling the Halloween blues. Been kind of down in the dumps. I'm still loving life. I'm still on cloud nine, but I don't know. I think stuff's just getting to me. I don't know. I don't know. No need to have a therapy session, but my phone actually completely just black screened. My phone just like stopped working, which was pretty cool actually. I enjoyed that because now things are quiet. Things are quiet. I don't have to, I don't have to worry about anything. I don't have to worry about anything. But no, I gotta get a new phone now, which is, another expense to deal with. My phone was really old. I had a Google Pixel 2, and that model came out in 2017, and I got the phone in 2018. So it served me for almost 8 years, coming up on 26 here. So it fought valiantly, but it eventually bit the dust. I'll get a new phone. I will, but I don't know. I was looking at the at like a dumb phones subreddit. I know that's super gay to be on Reddit, but like I was on a dumb phones subreddit, and everyone's posting their single use technology. So your phone's got like games and it takes pictures and all the rest, plays music, everything you need, and but everyone's got they're LARPing like it's 2005, which I don't know. Maybe I can get on board with that. I don't know. But so they're LARPing like it's 2005, and they got like their PSP, and they got their just like a regular watch, just like anything. Maybe it's like a digital watch or just something like this. They got like a digital, like old school camera to take photos. They got a dumb phone, like a flip phone. And they got, what else? Yeah, and like an MP3 music player. Which, I don't know. I kind of dig it. I kind of dig, the single use technology. Everything's a bit too streamlined nowadays. I don't know. I think maybe I'm just nostalgic. I don't know. We don't need to get into that, but I don't know. Maybe that's the move. But no, you need a phone. You got to get a phone for work and GPS and like all the rest. And it's like, oh, why can't things just be simple? Why can't we just turn back time? I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. I just lots of stuff's been happening lately. I guess I just have the Halloween blues. Um, I don't know. I don't want this show to go off the rails. I don't want to say anything that's just like a blackmail collection for me. You know how it goes. You say things and you get animated or something like that, and like all the gatekeepers that don't want you to have a job in Ottawa or like anywhere will clip it up, have it as like ammunition for like your reputational destruction. But I don't know, it's so because I don't know. It's a very hard thing to balance about like like telling the truth and like making sure things don't go off the rails. So tonight we're talking about pro-life stuff. I want to set the reason why I want to make this episode is because I see frequently within pro-life circles, at pro-life events, pro-life conferences, and pro-life groups that there isn't really a specific doctrine that people align themselves with. It's always like we're always either like playing like this having people to play catch up. Someone says something that's off kilter, and then we all have to create this facade that like, yes, you are still welcome here, because there is like no political will behind the pro-life cause. All these Christians that go on about compassion and charity, they don't care that 300 kids every single day in our country get murdered in the womb. They talk a big game about helping the poor and, everything that totally fits in line with the liberal ideology of Parliament Hill and the universities and, all the other institutions throughout the country. Not just even throughout the country, but I just mean it in a sort of I'm saying it in the sense that we can understand the society. Voice crack. Yeah. So they constantly just appease to, helping the poor, being against racism, just all the Christian values that align succinctly with the status quo. Abortion, being pro-life, does not align with the status quo. So that they're very sheepish about. And really, that just goes to show you the unacceptable situation for a Christian or a Catholic is that because the church is so divorced from the state, because the church is so divorced from the society is primary, and then comes the church. Priests literally tell me that if they actually had a sermon where they like unapologetically denounced abortion, they would have people walk out. They have had people walk out because they properly and accurately articulated the church's position on murdering a kid in the womb. So that's always frustrating. And so what I mean is that in a lot of these circles, people are they don't really know what pro-life means. And you think it would be very self-explanatory, but a lot of people are confused. So that's really why I wanted to do this show in the first place, is that there's so much organization, there's so many like networking opportunities that people get up to, there's so many groups and organizations. But it seems just always so fruitless because there isn't a unifying dogma. There isn't someone constantly saying what the doctrine is. There isn't someone constantly setting the tone. Not that I think that I would be that person. To tell you the truth, I really just started this show because I don't want to develop schizophrenia. I think I might be like heading that way. Fingers crossed. But yeah. Anyway, and to put into perspective what I'm talking about, I'm going to put someone on blast, and forgive me if this comes across as gossiping. I don't intend it to. So I was doing some pro-life activism, and again, this isn't about disparaging the person. I'm bringing this up not to like air out dirty laundry or complain that like I got into an argument. I'm doing it to articulate a particular point that I think is fruitful. And I was talking to this person, And I told them he knew one of my colleagues that I was with. He was with his wife as well. So it was him and his wife, me and my colleague, and we were out doing pro-life stuff. And they're Christians. They're from a church. That's how my colleague knows them. They're from her church. And we get into a conversation. We get into a back and forth. They say, "Hey, like, what are you doing? What are you doing out here? It's nice to see you. Nice to see you out here." And I unapologetically say that we're doing pro-life activism. We're out doing pro-life stuff. Excuse me. And he goes, "Oh, that's good. That's wonderful." And we get into a conversation just about abortion and everything. And you know people at church, you know people around, and it's not something that you talk about a lot. And clearly, same story with these people. It wasn't really something that was like on their mind, obviously. But we get into the discussion, and my colleague asked them, "What do you think about abortion? And, do you think it's like always okay, sometimes okay, never okay?" And they literally say, "We don't really need to have a discussion about it because we already agree with you. You don't need to check us or whatever." They even said that life is sacred, all the rest. Saying all the things, saying all the right words. I'm like, okay. And I just chime in because I talk to a lot of people about abortion. And I chime in and I say, you'd be surprised when they, in defense, say that we don't need to talk about it because we're already on your side, as if to imply, why are you pressing? We're Christians, you know that we have the right opinion about this. And then I press forward and I say, I'll take that back. Not really pressing. I'm just kind of chiming in on the conversation. And I just say something that I observe consistently when talking to people about abortion, which is that you'd be surprised. A lot of people, even Christians, are not where they need to be. I say that specifically, not where they need to be. And the guy, I've just met this guy. I don't even know who he is. I don't even know anything about him. But he freaks out at me and he goes, "Not where you think that they should be. Not where you think they should be." And I'm like, whoa, okay. And I just kind of, I don't know, I'm a little autistic. I just kind of, and I don't take things personally. At least I try not to. And, I kind of just, he said that and I kind of just brushed it off. I was like, well, okay. Maybe he's just kind of saying things like, I don't know, people say a lot of things that maybe they don't mean much, I don't know. But then my colleague pressed them, they were like, "Do you have like a specific situation in mind where you think abortion would be appropriate?" And then they say ectopic pregnancy. By the way, apologies for the constant transitions I'm having. We're still in the testing phase, okay, you can't get mad at me. Anyway, so they bring up ectopic pregnancy, and I immediately want to dive into that circumstance because it's a very important circumstance to discuss. Sure, it's rare, but it happens, and in particular, it happened to this lady's sister. And I wanted to dive into that circumstance. But as usual, the conversation kind of just meandered away from that. We kind of just ended up talking about a myriad of other different things. I didn't really get a chance to complete my point. And then, upon further investigation, not only did they support abortion in the instance of ectopic pregnancy, but they also supported abortion in the instance of sexual assault, if the woman is raped. They also supported abortion in the instance of poverty. They said, yeah, there's a lot of different circumstances, and really, we just got to focus on the circumstances where people are using it as birth control. That's the one that we have to tackle. Everything else is kind of just, it's understandable. It's like you can't get too worked up about those instances. And I was given a bit of pushback. I was trying to explain myself. And this guy, again, who I barely even knew, said that, he was so upset with me that I said that certain Christians are not where they want to be. And I think it's kind of freaking obvious what I mean by that, especially with what the lady espoused. If you believe that life, I mean, specifically, she said that life is sacred. Well, that doesn't, start to change when you're in a difficult circumstance. That doesn't start to change when, like, the circumstance differs, when there's something that tragic happens. That doesn't change the fact that every human being deserves the right to life. Every human being is made in the image of God. So I thought we were on the same page, that abortion is always wrong. But, we weren't. So anyways, this guy's got a big problem with me. Every single one of these, old Gen X, millennial types, boomers, whatever, they love it when young people are so precocious. They love it when young people are so into politics and whatever. Until the moment they start disagreeing with them, until the moment they've actually got an argument to that person's worldview. Boomers love it when you just tell them everything that you want to hear, everything. It's all these like older people. It's just like, I just want you to come, and not just them. Like, it really is just everybody. Everyone just wants you to. No one can have a discussion about anything because everyone just wants you to affirm their prejudices. I'm not interested in your perspective. I'm not interested that, like, maybe there's a perspective that I haven't heard. I don't feel like a moral obligation to investigate the truth. Please, fill up my trough full of pig slop and, like, please, I'm going to stick my snout right in. Like I mentioned, I don't take stuff personally. But the guy starts going off at me, and he says, like, yeah, like, you really shouldn't be telling women what to do. It's Christian, by the way. You really shouldn't be telling women what to do. Like, I would feel uncomfortable if you started saying all this stuff about abortion in front of my wife, which I was directly talking to his wife. And so he's basically saying that I'm making him uncomfortable. He doesn't like, and I've just met this guy, and he feels this, this immediate freedom to just start attacking me. I don't know who he is. He doesn't know me, which is just par for the course. Everyone is so open to discussing everything and everything. Everything about everything. What am I saying? Everyone is so open to discussing anything about everything until it's an opinion that's to the right of them. Until it's an opinion that is to the right of them, they're willing to be charitable and open-minded to stuff that's left-wing and everything like that. Until it's a right-wing opinion, then the gloves are off. Then it's like, oh, who do you think you are? Like, you're forcing your beliefs on people, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, yeah. So that conversation kind of goes nowhere, and they give me this sort of proverbial, like, yeah, like, keep doing what you're doing and whatever, and like that, because, like, I think the wife could tell that the husband was kind of being mean to me. And again, and I don't want to come off as, like, my feelings are hurt. I do want to make a point about this. I did think it was kind of rude, but, like, I'm not going to say who that was. I'm not trying to disparage anybody. Let's just get back on track here. Anyone who's in the pro-life movement knows that there are people that call themselves pro-life who aren't. People say that they're pro-life, and then they'll make exception after exception after exception. And a lot of the dichotomy now seems to be that people think, especially people who, like, donate to, like, pregnancy care centers, they think that pro-choice is, like, what they are. They think that, like, pro-choice is, like, a good thing. What they mean by pro-choice is, like, they believe that, like, women should have the choice between life and abortion, and they agree with that choice, and, like, them funding a pregnancy care center, them sort of, helping women in difficult situations who want to make that choice, whether or not they have their baby or don't have their baby. They want to help women in that circumstance. And so they view the sort of, I guess, far out left wing position. Maybe they're not even conceptualizing it as like a right or a left thing. They're sort of just like, they see people out protesting for women's rights, abortion, and things like that, and they think that means like women shouldn't have kids. When you say like I'm pro-abortion, they take that as you're saying like when women get pregnant, they should just go have an abortion. But of course, you know that that's not the proper dichotomy. This dichotomy of like, oh, I'm pro-choice and that means pregnancy care centers help, and if you want an abortion, that's you. I'm pro-life. I wouldn't get an abortion myself, but if you want to do it, hey, like that's your thing, whatever. Versus the sort of like, they have this idea in their head, once again, that the sort of pro-abortion crowd is like clamoring, every baby should die, every baby needs to be killed. And that's not the dichotomy. And if you say that, that a woman has a choice to have an abortion, guess what? You're pro-abortion. That's what, when people go out in the streets and they're campaigning for abortion and saying it's a good thing and saying that it saved their life and whatever, you're actually on like the complete same page. There is no distinction. And it's crazy that I even have to say that. I even have to say that to people. So yeah, I think you can kind of see where I'm going with this. If you believe that abortion is okay in these sort of difficult circumstances, that is still pro-choice. And what do I mean by that? Like, what is an abortion? Let's think about it. Let's cut through the euphemisms. Let's cut through like all the going on about like healthcare and women's rights and all that. What is an abortion? An abortion is when a woman is pregnant. She has a living human being growing inside her womb. Let's not be coy about it. Let's not take the religion out of it. God has blessed her, has entrusted a child in her care. She has the unique responsibility to love and care for that child. And I'll say, of course, just so that the women don't get pissed off, the man who has helped her conceive that child has the unique responsibility to love and care for that child as well. The woman, because it's in her body, it's a particularly unique relationship that means that her protecting and looking over it is a very significant responsibility. God has entrusted this child in her care, okay? And an abortion is when a woman decides to terminate that pregnancy, whether it's through a medical abortion where she takes a pill and the pill attacks the rapidly dividing cells in her womb and basically causes them to eviscerate, and the baby comes out of her with like its eyelids like half developed, with blood everywhere. There's usually heavy bleeding with medical abortions. That's at least a common side effect. Maybe I won't say it's all the time. Or in the case of a surgical abortion, where the doctor will go in and the doctor will tug off the baby's limbs because they have to get the baby outside of the mom. They have to suction the baby out with a high-powered vacuum called a cannula. And the cannula is like 10 times more powerful than your average household vacuum. It is intense, and it rips apart a baby. It rips apart a vulnerable, small little child, okay? It tears its arms and legs off. It crushes its skull, and it comes out of the mom and it gets put into a bio-waste container and thrown into a dumpster. That's the child that the mom was entrusted by God to protect. Now it's in a dumpster. Okay? So, and this is what we're talking about. It isn't some abstraction. This stuff is so hard to get lost in the weeds with because you can't see preborn children. You can't see them. Absent of an ultrasound, absent of seeing their discarded bodies on on the abortionist's scalpel table, you can't properly identify with them, so they get lost in these abstractions. But make no mistake about it, an abortion is when a mother decides to kill her child. That's what we're talking about. And if we think about these different types of situations, let's just list them off. Let's just go down the list. Let's say a woman is in a situation where she's impoverished. Excuse me. This is a lot of why abortions happen. Oh wow, excuse me. Getting a little burpy. They happen because a woman does not have the proper financial means. This is reported that a lot of the elective abortions that happen, the majority of them are due to financial constraints. And whether that's impoverishment or, some sort of the woman just said the kid's going to cost too much, we don't know. But of course we understand that that's a thing that women have to consider. Is that especially if the dad walks out on them, they have to take care of this baby, and the baby needs diapers, the baby needs food, the baby needs clothing, the baby needs shelter, and the baby needs to be taken care of. So maybe that's hours that the woman can't work. There's a significant time and financial constraint. And when we take this into account, there's a demand for a woman in a situation like that to have an abortion. So let's think about it. Thinking about what an abortion is, it's killing a preborn child. Is that, poverty, baby clothes, diapers, breakfast, lunch, dinner. I can't work overtime now because I have to take care of this child. Does it make sense to kill that child? To solve that problem? And that always goes back down to, is the child alive? Is it human? Where does life begin? Well, what else would you call the child if it's not human? If the child is in the womb, if the child is the offspring of humans, how could it not be human? If the child is developing, how is it not alive? Is it dead? If it's dead, the woman's going to get sepsis because that's going to cause disease. That's going to cause a major bacterial infection. I don't think it's dead. I don't think it's not human. That doesn't really even make any sense. We know that when two people reproduce, when they get together and they conceive, they have a new person. There's a new human being. When a sperm fertilizes an egg, we have a new human being. Is my audio synced up? I hope so. You can't get mad at me. We're still in the testing phase, okay? So you can't get mad at me. I hope it is. So yeah, we know from the moment of fertilization we have a new human being. We have a human being that's created in the image of God. And it's only Christians, and this is why the pro-life movement has to be Christian. It's only Christians that understand the significance of that. Sure, a scientist can tell you all day long that, of course life begins at fertilization. Where else would it start? But a Christian understands the importance of God's gift. The importance of God inviting us to take part in the act of creation. it's an expression of love. It's an expression, it's letting us understand how God loves us. Because everyone understands the love that a parent has for a child, and this mirrors and reflects the way God loves us because we are God's children. So that's very important. Life begins at fertilization. The preborn child is alive, obviously, and it's human. It's a living human being. Does poverty, justify murder? Does it justify killing? We have a homelessness problem in every single city. Should we just go kill those people? Does that even make any sense? That sounds very anti-life. That sounds very anti-human. That sounds like if you said that around people, they would think you're kind of crazy. So that's that circumstance. I don't think... So no, you're not pro-life if you support killing a preborn child because of poverty. Well, what about if the child's going to end up in the foster care system? The foster care system is not ideal. It's not what we want for kids. A lot of pro-life groups push adoption constantly. Of course, I believe that adoption is absolutely a better alternative than abortion, but I think there is something very important for a kid to be with their biological parents. Because, if you ask any adopted kid, anyone who grew up in foster care, there is that intense yearning for their biological family. And that's not to say that an adoptive family can't properly take care of their children. It's not to say that there isn't adoptive kids that are warmly welcomed into a family where they are not biologically related. It's to say that it's not ideal. It's not something that you would want. And there's something intrinsic there, I think. But let's think about it. So we got the basics down. We understand that life begins at fertilization when you have sex and a sperm fertilizes an egg. There's a unique genetic code. The organism fundamentally changes. There is no sperm anymore. There is no egg. There's a zygote. That's a unique organism with unique functionality. It's different. It's uniquely different. It's meaningfully different. The preborn child, again, is alive and human. Can you kill a preborn child so that it doesn't end up in foster care? I would say no. Because that doesn't make any sense. Because although there is suffering, we don't throw away the gift of life in the light of suffering. We don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, literally, not to have sort of a distasteful metaphor, but suffering does not mean that death is an appropriate solution. Especially when you're choosing it. Not to say that I agree with it when you choose it for yourself, but it's especially vulgar when you choose it for a little child. And if we just think about it, would we ever say a good solution to our foster care system if kids are suffering in bad foster homes, should we just kill those kids? No. So, yeah, I don't think you're pro-life if you support abortion so that kids don't end up in foster care. What about, let's go on to another circumstance, because there's a lot of difficult pregnancy circumstance. What if the mom is underage? What if the mom is 14, 15, or 16? That's too young to be a parent. And I think most people can get on board with that. Most people realize that that's not an ideal age for a person to be pregnant. I don't think anyone would say that. And, and let's just think about it. A mom that young, she's not mature. She doesn't, have all her faculties about herself. Her brain's probably not even properly developed yet. She's probably financially unstable. So there you go. There's like a poverty element on top of that. She, probably will have to lean on her parents to deal with this circumstance. And I'll speed things up just that we can get through the episode. Would we say it's okay for children who have teenage parents for us to just kill them? So that the mom doesn't have to deal with that problem. How does that make you feel to even consider that kind of idea? Because a human being made in the image of God, who is human, just like every one of us, they can just be tossed away. They can just be out of sight, out of mind, because they inconvenience the mom. Because they inconvenience the family. Why do we treat children like that? Why do we treat each other like that? That we're an inconvenience. We're too much work. We're a burden. Why do we say that about children? Why do we justify that? How is that not the most selfish, callous, evil thing to say about children, to conduct families in this way, to have it legal in our country, to have it to be, we pound our chest and talk about women's rights and healthcare and everything and all the rest. And we cook up these horror stories about these difficult situations. And Christians who are supposed to stick up for the dignity of life, supposed to defend every human life at every stage, they quiver and they concede on something that should be so objectionable to anyone with a conscience. That is not right. You are not pro-life if you support a teenager getting an abortion. Even just that coming out of my mouth, can you not, is it not evident how disgusting that is? A teenager killing their baby. That woman needs anything but abortion in that instance. So those are the sort of instances that are mild in comparison to the other two that we'll talk about. Those are the sort of instances where it'll always come back to this sort of, well, you can't really be crying about that because you consented to have sex. You should understand your predicament. You should understand if you're too young, if you don't have enough money, if you know the kid's going to end up in adoption anyway, you should have understood beforehand your situation before you decided to have sex, before you decided to get inculcated in the baby-making process. And that's an important thing to bring up. We have to encourage responsibility and things like that. I think it's, and it's always this tightrope that we have to walk where we also have to be charitable. Listen, people make mistakes. And I'm not trying to downsize it. Sex out of wedlock is a mortal sin. And that I'm not trying to say that it's not a big deal or like it's okay if people do it. It's not okay if people do it. People should not do it. It's wrong. But we do have to have we can't be one note. There has to be sort of a multidimensional approach to these different circumstances. We have to show empathy, but we also have to demand responsibility. And really, it sounds hard, but it really shouldn't be, at least in my opinion. So if we know that abortion is not okay in the instance of poverty, if we know it's not okay in the instance of teenage pregnancy, if we know it's not okay in the instance of the child ending up in foster care, what do you say when one of these feminists, when one of these pro-choicers, when one of these people that are pro-abortion come up to you and say, are you seriously going to say that when a woman gets raped, when a woman gets pregnant through rape, that she should have to keep her baby? And then they go on, they start saying to Christians, they start saying to people who are trying to find the best solution for women and the baby, people who are acting with their conscience, people who are trying to stand up for what's right when this barbarous, murderous alternative is available to women. They're trying to have these conversations. They're trying to actually have a dialogue about it. They're trying to stick up for the right to life of that baby. These sick, disgusting people with their piercings and their tattoos and their colored hair, all these frumpy, overweight women, they say to you, you don't care if a woman gets raped. What a nasty, uncharitable, disgusting accusation to levy at someone. If you have said this to someone because they've expressed pro-life views, shame on you. Shame on you. There is no charity, no willing to actually have a conversation with someone who talks like that. To someone over just a disagreement. You don't care if someone gets raped. Who are you to say such a thing? So what do you do? What do you do when someone levies an accusation like that against you? Well, first things first, we are Christians, and we understand the importance of the dignity of life, and we understand the importance of charity. And we know, especially if you do any sort of pro-life activism, you know that you'll get yelled at, you'll get cursed at, people will come up and try to attack you in some cases. We know that we suffer in this life. We know that there is suffering in the world. We understand that bad things happen to us. People persecute us. But it is not acceptable for us to return the cruelty. It is not acceptable for us to take out our anger and our hatred out on other people. There is, of course, justice. There is, of course, people get their... people have to be told what's right and wrong. People have to be punished if they're doing something wrong. But there's a big difference between that and letting out your hatred on people. And we also understand that it's even worse when you bottle up all your hatred inside. Bad things are happening to you, like, you're in a bad circumstance and you take it out on someone else. I've had a bad day at work. I'm going to come home and berate my family. I'm going to be violent, which is extremely inappropriate. We understand that that is wrong, that is contrary to our worldview. And so in the instance of a woman getting raped and then becoming pregnant, we understand that a horrible thing has happened, and it is unacceptable and unloving for a woman to take the guilt and the hatred and the frustration that she has over the experience that she has endured out on this child and say, I can't take care of you. You're an inconvenience to me. You're making me feel bad. That's unacceptable, actually. There's nothing unloving about that, and to suggest that abortion is okay in the instance of sexual assault is evil. So to suggest that in a situation like this, where things are already so dire, things are already so mucked in cruelty, to suggest a barbarous solution like that, if you've done something like that, shame on you. If you've suggested that that's okay, way to just go and make a situation worse. Totally unacceptable. That's our worldview on that. There's nothing charitable about suggesting abortion in the instance of sexual assault. You're just making the situation worse, and honestly, a million times worse, to suggest the child should die. And again, we have to go back to what makes the pro-life worldview so compelling is that it's consistent. If abortion is not okay in the instance of birth control, if that's unacceptable, why is it suddenly okay in this circumstance? What changed? What changed about the biology of the child? What changed about any of it? Is this all of a sudden not a living human being that's made in God's image? No, it's the same kid. The same kid that and people make all of these analogies. They talk about like, trying to get these people to understand, these uncharitable freaks who go out and say these disgusting things about people with their disgusting ideology, with no sort of capacity to have a dialogue, trying to get these people to understand. They cook up these analogies about, like, well, what if you saw a baby in a superstore and you were the only person there? What if you were out in the desert and the baby was there? Wouldn't you have a responsibility to take care of it? This idea that, like, a baby has been foisted upon you, don't you still have a obligation to take care of it? It's the de facto guardian principle. But I am not sure that any of those analogies fully capture the circumstance that a woman's in when she gets pregnant through rape. And of course, that is a unique circumstance. And the fact is that we can't magically pretend that the unfairness isn't there. Pregnancy is a unique thing that women have to bear. It's a unique responsibility. Just like men have unique responsibilities, women have unique responsibilities. Equality is not part of it. Unfairness is baked into the cake. So that's how you handle that circumstance, okay? So enough of this, walking on eggshells about that circumstance. Abortion, suggesting to a woman who's already been through rape that she should get an abortion is absolutely freaking evil, okay? And if you don't have you need to have a strong position on that, okay? It's insane how many Christians just cuck on that. We need to, and they always say, well, what if your daughter got raped? And these people love to just churn with that, to put that image in your head. What if your daughter was raped? They love that imagery just sort of speeding through your subconscious. And it's to make you feel guilty and to make you feel insecure and whatever. Yeah, if my daughter got raped, I probably wouldn't be thinking rationally. About anything. That's why we're having this conversation. That's why we're trying to talk. We're trying to talk about this. We're trying to actually talk about what the right thing is to do. You think I'm like, let's not be coy. I understand that it's emotional. I understand that this is extremely difficult, but we have to do what's right if we're dealing with a living human being. People's lives matter. A baby's life matters, okay? So anyway, yeah. Abortion is not okay in the instance of sexual assault. Not at all. Getting a little worked up. It makes you animated. It's disgusting what these people say and what happens in our country. We kill 300 babies every single day in our country and no one freaking cares. And not to be like a bleeding heart about it, but it's like, is there any decency left? That's just, I don't even understand what the rationale is for that, like, little vulnerable babies. And people want to grasp at straws about that. Oh, there's no heartbeat, there's no consciousness. Why the frick does that matter? Trying not to curse. Why does that matter? Where's your sort of, like, can you not, like, have some sort of, like, understanding that, like, we were all at that point at one time in our life. The first thing that came through my mind when I learned what an abortion was, I didn't crack open my embryology textbook. I thought, like, what if my mom did that to me? I wouldn't be here. None of us would be here if our parents chose abortion. Does that not... do you have any humanity? Do you have any sort of, like, soul? If, like, that's not, like, potent for you. So that's sexual assault. That's what the proper position on sexual assault is. But what about, and I think a lot of Christians actually do understand that, but what about if there's a medical circumstance? What about if there's something like ectopic pregnancy, preeclampsia, sepsis? What do you do in a situation like that? I don't know about you. I don't have a medical degree. You know, what do you do about these things? And I think before we jump into this, we have to once again understand what an abortion is. When we have an abortion, when a doctor performs one, oftentimes he is ripping apart the arms and legs of a tiny little baby, crushing its skull, vacuuming it out of a woman's womb, treating it, literally throwing it in the garbage. Just the most horrific. If you're like a human being, I encourage everyone who's watching this, watch an abortion video. Watch what this stuff actually is. What these people out in the streets are saying is healthcare and saves lives. What a load of BS. We have to understand what we're talking about, and an abortion is killing a baby. Really sit on that. Is that ever okay? Is that ever justifiable? And when we're talking about medical circumstances like this, it seems to me that even if we're not medical experts, even if we're not like doctors or anything like that, there seems to be this proclivity of pro-lifers wanting to have that one exception, wanting to sort of sound reasonable, sound compassionate, wanting to have this one area where they can concede and be like, yeah, like that makes sense. Always wanting to meet these bloodthirsty feminists in the middle, saying like, yeah, like that one, I don't know about that one, I'm not a doctor. It perturbs me because if you're pro-life, shouldn't you be, trying your best to understand these circumstances and wanting to see if there's a way to navigate these that doesn't involve killing a baby? Where are your priorities? This is what I'm talking about when I say there is no political will behind this cause, and there should be. It's so like just crazy that there isn't. But let's think about it. Let's think about some of these situations, and I maybe just want to hone in on ectopic pregnancy. Maybe first we'll just think about what an abortion is, or like where my head is at when we're navigating ectopic pregnancy. My head is that you can never do that to a baby ever. These circumstances are very particular because people view it as like a toss-up between the baby and between the woman. My head is at like we cannot on purpose and intentionally and directly kill the baby. That's where my head is at, okay? So when I'm dealing with something like ectopic pregnancy, I'm not cutting corners. I'm not saying like, well, maybe the woman can just take a pill. Maybe we can just if it gets a little too hairy, if the expenses are rising up too high, if stuff becomes more timely, more costly, maybe, the woman can just have an abortion. That's not where my head is at. And very unfortunately, that's where a lot of doctors' heads are at. The easier option, the more time sensitive, the more cost-friendly option is an abortion. And, that just goes to show the difference in priorities. And if you're a Christian, the priority has to be the sanctity of life. Going to a doctor who doesn't care about the sanctity of life of the preborn child is, in my mind, just as foolish as going to a doctor who doesn't care about the sanctity of the mom's life. Okay? So, if we're dealing with something like ectopic pregnancy, we basically have, technically 4, but let's just stick with 3 options. So, the first option is, the woman can take something called methotrexate, which basically just acts as a chemical abortion. It'll basically just kill the baby that is caught in her fallopian tube. Maybe first things first, I'll explain to you what an ectopic pregnancy is. An ectopic pregnancy is when the baby doesn't properly implant where it should be, which is in the uterus. It implants somewhere else, and typically it's in the fallopian tube. And there is urgency already here, because if the baby grows too big, it will cause the fallopian tube to burst and the mother will bleed out to death. The baby will die and the mother will die. We have to do something, okay? So first thing that a doctor is going to be thinking about is that maybe this woman can just take methotrexate, she can just take a pill, and that'll basically attack the rapidly dividing cells, and it will cause the baby to abort. It's an abortion, and I'm against that. I'm against that procedure for ectopic pregnancy. Number two, the doctor can go in, and this is especially a doctor will want to do this if the baby's farther along. A doctor can go in and snip the fallopian tube and jam the cannula in there, which is the high-powered vacuum that we've talked a lot about during this episode, and basically just perform an abortion. It will suck the baby's arms and legs off, turning it into a paste, crushing its skull, all together. It's an abortion. I'm against that. There is a third option. This option is when you snip the fallopian tube on both ends and you extract the baby out and put it into an artificial womb. This is with intense supervision, understanding that it is possible that the baby can pass through the fallopian tube and eventually implant in the uterus. It is understood that, in order for the baby to properly survive in a NICU, which is an artificial womb, the record for that is about 19 weeks. So monitoring it very closely, that we can be extracting the baby at the right time so that its likelihood for survival is utmost high. And I understand, I say all this stuff, and if you're not familiar with this and you just don't know and it just seems too hairy to you, you just say, oh, just let her have an abortion. If that's where your priority is with this, if that's where your priority is just about what's convenient, I understand that this is horrific. I understand that this is extremely, we're really, at the edge here of, a hard circumstance. A woman, the clock is ticking and a woman's fallopian tube could explode. I understand that it is difficult. I also understand that if a woman is in a situation like that and she loves her child, she wants her baby to survive. If there's a chance that the baby can survive and the woman can survive, if we're doctors, if we understand that life is sacred, we ought to be, it's not just a nice flavor. It's not just well, if the woman wants. We are obligated to take those pro-life options, okay? This is so important. A lot of people brush aside this circumstance because they don't understand it. They don't understand the complexities with it. And this is it's so important because this is the bump that a lot of people are behind. A lot of people, what's going to spark the fire in their belly, what's going to get them involved in the pro-life movement, what's going to get them involved in pro-life stuff and be outspoken about it and be very passionate about it, is if they get past this exception. And that's why it's so important. So once again, that's how you deal with that circumstance. And you might say, well, the baby's probably going to die in the NICU anyway. Yeah, that's a foreseeable thing that can happen, but I'm sure you appreciate the difference that when you go in and rip the baby's arms and legs off, you're trying to kill it. When you put the baby into an artificial womb, you're trying to save it. Because if the baby stays inside the fallopian tube and the woman's fallopian tube bursts and she dies, the baby's going to die too. We have to do something. Some people think, when they think of abortion, they think of a miscarriage and having to expel dormant fetal tissue. What I'm against and what I'm talking about with abortion is when you kill the child on purpose. And so if we're talking about something let's say a situation where the woman has cervical cancer. She's pregnant, she has cervical cancer, and she needs chemotherapy. And we understand that a possible risk of that chemotherapy is that it could terminate the pregnancy. And there's a conversation to be had about that, about maybe the woman can wait, the chemotherapy can wait, and the woman can have an early delivery for the child. Again, we know that children can survive outside the womb up to like 19 weeks. That's the record at least. Usually it's around like 21, 24. That's viability. But let's just say we're like, it's down to the wire. The woman needs chemotherapy now or she's going to die. And the baby is like just a few weeks along and she gets chemotherapy and that medical treatment unintentionally, and you notice that I use that word unintentional. Intention is the appropriate thing that we're talking about. That medical intervention unintentionally and indirectly terminates the pregnancy. I think that's tragic. I don't really consider that an abortion because of the intentionality of the procedure. There's a very important difference there. Because if you ask doctors, they will tell you that abortion, killing the kid on purpose, even a doctor who's pro-choice, who believes in abortion and if a patient wants one, he'll perform one, they'll agree with you they'll tell you abortion is never medically necessary to save the life of the mother. It's never necessary. There is always another option. Always. For any of these circumstances, cervical cancer, ectopic pregnancy, preeclampsia, anything you want to cook up, doctors say abortion is never medically necessary. And for me, that is ecstatic news. You don't have to kill the baby, like, praise God. It's so perturbing that for so many people, they are so reluctant to sort of believe that. They don't want to believe that. Why? Because you don't want to sound crazy, because you don't want to sound uncompassionate. What about the baby? Fundamentally, that's who we have to stick up for. These kids, 300 of them every single day. Abortion which is child sacrifice, by the way, is heralded as this, cornerstone of our society. These kids just get forgotten. We have to stick up for them. If there's a way in these difficult circumstances for us to advocate for them, why would we not gravitate towards them? Why would we be sheepish? Why would we be reluctant? But that just goes to show you where people's priorities are, and it's very bad. And so, no, if you just want to hand wave away an ectopic pregnancy and say, yeah, you should just get an abortion, who cares? Yeah, you are not pro-life. You are not pro-life. And so many women have gotten an abortion and they don't even know that there was an option available where their kid could have been saved because of that kind of attitude. So no, you are not pro-life if you support abortion in the instance of ectopic pregnancy or any number of these medical circumstances. Abortion is always wrong. Abortion is always wrong. That's the correct position. Crazy that you even have to talk about that. And then we get into people who say like, oh, maybe 6 weeks, maybe until there's a heartbeat. Life begins at fertilization. We are dealing with a living human being made in the image of God the moment it's conceived. Okay? And this is just all over the pro-life movement. It's these Christians were like, they basically they have two wrong opinions. They're homophobic and they're pro-life, and and they're all the same as liberals. You really talk to them about what they think about other different types of issues, immigration, war, economics, anything like that. You really press them, and most of them are basically just Bolsheviks. If you really start to talk to them, they just got two wrong opinions. They're pro-life and they're homophobic because it's contrary to their religion. And they, just sheepishly wiggle around them. They don't want to stick up for what they believe in. And even if they do, they just hate the social ostracization. Because look around our society. Our society champions abortion, champions pornography, homosexuality, degeneracy. They blaspheme Jesus Christ. Why would you not sort of take... I don't understand the discomfort in being somewhat of a radical. Why do you want to be a part of this, like, satanic system? Why do you want to have a place in it? And don't mischaracterize what I'm saying. I'm not saying we should just run for the hills. That is obviously not what I'm saying. Part of making a show is that people are just going to take whatever you say and just not listen, or just take it the totally wrong way or whatever. What I'm saying is that I don't understand the discomfort with being radical. Why do you want to be a part of our society right now? Our society is disgusting. But there's people in the pro-life movement that they'll go that far. They'll say, yes, abortion is always wrong. But that's when you turn to, like, pro-life apologetica. That's where, people sort of get this idea in their head. They realize how disgusting our society is. They realize how our society has just fully embraced killing children, treating children as an inconvenience, a burden, just sort of foisting abortion onto people. And they go all the way. They're up to the point where they say that abortion is always wrong, which is correct. And they sort of get this idea that, like, if we just talk to people, if we just get people to understand that a preborn child is a living human being, if we just get people to understand that life begins at fertilization, we can work with people. And we can slowly but surely, with the smallest megaphone, because our worldview is so compelling, we can usurp the doctrine that everyone has sort of bought into. And with love and compassion, we can make people pro-life. And again, there's not a lot that I necessarily disagree with. The pro-life worldview is compelling. If people just really think about it, who aren't initiated in the sort of like the pro-choice dogma, they will likely come to the pro-life side, because that's, again, the pro-life worldview is more compelling. And of course, I think in any conversation we have to be loving, compassionate, charitable. So that sort of, what that does is that assumes that people are rational. And that assumes that, like, people can just be easily swayed within, like, a 10-minute conversation. And that's just not true. And oftentimes, if someone is willing to change their mind on a deeply personal and deeply significant and grave issue like this within, like, a very short conversation, they're either low IQ, they either don't really have strong feelings about it to begin with, they're either insanely agreeable. One of those three. And what that means is that when they are finished with the conversation and they go out, back into the world, those, I will never say it's not productive to have the conversation, to talk to people, especially when we have the smallest megaphone. I mean, what else are we going to do? But to act like that is starting some sort of revolution is just hysterical. That is just, like, not true. And that's because that everything in the society is enforcing two things that I think are very important. Everything in the society is enforcing liberalism and is enforcing feminism. And what do I mean by that? A pro-choice apologist will look at someone saying, "My body, my choice," and they will basically want to sort of confined in the person that they understand that bodily autonomy is an important value. I mean, if you talk to a lot of these pro-life apologists, a lot of them are anti-vax. So they understand more than anybody how important bodily autonomy is. But first things first, we have to, or maybe secondhand, we have to understand that, like, the preborn child is a living human being. And if it is a living human being, we cannot justify killing them. And if we, and of course, and if we could just talk this out with people, if we could just, get them to think about it with people who care deeply about this, who, who are, like, decently intelligent, who can, like, think about it critically. The thing is that they will probably never change their mind with just one conversation or two conversations or three conversations. It's probably not going to happen. And there is this naivete in the movement that, like, people, we just have to be banging the same drum. Life begins at fertilization. A preborn child is a human being. It's alive. It's, and the thing is that doesn't address the societal problems that are leading to abortion. And what do I mean by that? When people say that, when a man says that, like, I'm a man, I don't have any say in this, it's not my issue, it's not something that I have a right to talk about, what they are saying is that a woman's autonomy, a woman's sort of individuality is supreme. When they say, in the instance of any of these circumstances, sexual assault, poverty, teenage pregnancy, foster care, they're saying that a woman's choice, a woman's sovereignty over her body is supreme. It supersedes the right to life of the preborn child. And we think that that is just obviously insane. And if we could just talk to people about it, then they would understand how crazy it is, and then they would change their mind. But the thing is that they're not going to, because their priority is the woman. And that is feminism. It's insane. Like, when you go in the pro-life movement, none of them want to be anti-feminist. None of them want to take a strong stance and say, like, yeah, we're against the idea that men and women are fundamentally equal. That's insane. We're against the idea that gender is a social construct. And if you read any sort of feminist literature, they will say that the key for women throwing off the shackles of marriage and being independent, being a part of the workforce, being their own individual person, is reproductive rights. That's the key. That's the key to women throwing off the shackles of marriage. And of course, that just makes sense. What's the biggest obstacle between a woman being equal to a man? Her reproductive faculty. So of course it makes sense. And of course, that's why people prioritize the woman in these different situations. It's because they're feminist. They're feminist. A woman's sovereignty over her body is supreme. We don't have a right to tell her anything about it. That's feminism. I'm tired of pro-lifers not being able to say that. It's so frustrating. People will say that they're a pro-life feminist. Get out of here with that. People have these priorities because the society is feminist. The society lauds feminism. Go to a university. They'll be constantly drilling feminism into the students' heads. Watch any movie nowadays. Every movie's about a strong female character. Every movie's about a woman, taking the reins from a man, and she's her own person, and she has a complex emotional. That's feminism. What do I believe? I believe that men and women are fundamentally different. That's against feminism. It's just so crazy, dude. It's like, And then people get so like alarmist about it. It's like, you say any of this stuff in the pro-life movement, and like, who's the first person who's gonna get upset about it? The women. The women. And of course they'll say like, oh, I'm so trad, I'm like this, I'm this pro-life Christian girl, I'm against all these crazy, girls out there. But if you say anything that's like actually anti-feminist, if you say like yeah, like women should be listening to men, women actually shouldn't curse, women should be ladylike, women should like kind of know their place, oh, then they got a real problem with it. I can't tell you how many conversations I've been in with women about abortion, and them being like, well, like, is it really about feminism? Is it really like, it's about moral relativism. It's about like the media, and it's about just anything other than what it obviously is. And the second coin of that is that, when you look at all of these libertarians that'll scream at you that you're pushing religious dogma on people, all of these, people that say like people have their choices. Well, why is choice? Why is that something that people even freaking care about? It's because they're liberal. It's because they think that options and freedom and stuff like that is paramount. That's their priority. These things aren't rational. People have their proclivities, okay? Tradition and Christianity is my proclivity. It's my priority. Feminism and liberalism are the people's priority. And you're not going to fix that with a little conversation about embryology, okay? People fundamentally have to stop caring about these things. And if you go, maybe I won't say this. I won't say not caring about those things. I'll say they have to stop being, I'm getting a little off the rails, so pardon me. They have to stop viewing them as priorities. If we want a pro-life future, people have got to stop thinking that liberalism and feminism are priorities, women's rights and freedom to choose this and that. They have to stop being priorities. And that's when you understand that having a pro-life movement that's just run by women, who, let's be honest, a lot of them are feminist, you got like a disaster on your hands. Having a conservative movement that's full of libertarians, well then, yeah, the pro-life worldview doesn't really have a place in that. Yeah, we have to be a liberal. We have to be anti-feminist. Which is just crazy that I even have to say that. I've heard so much stuff like, we want freedom and liberty for the preborn children, like, or people go about like the history of the sexual revolution, and they don't talk about feminism. Seriously? Or they try to say that like that's a different thing. They try to say that like feminism is this different strain than, than sexual revolutionaries. It's just all this crap. Feminism is the problem. People's priorities are a woman's autonomy and the right to choose. If you talk to people, it'll constantly just be going back to that, okay? And I've had conversations with people with topics that are much, much more complex than abortion, okay? Abortion is pretty cut and dry. Don't kill children, you freaking weirdo, okay? I've had conversations with people about like complex geopolitical matters, complex, political ideologies and stuff like that. And you can go around and around and around, and you'll even sometimes, the person will even say, yeah, you changed my mind. And what they're going to do is that after you're done talking to them, they're going to go on YouTube, they're going to go on the internet, and they're just going to find a bunch of stuff that reaffirms their prejudice, okay? It is like virtually, with very important matters, it is like virtually impossible to change someone's mind. I'm not saying it's fruitless. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have the discussion. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try, especially with a subject that people are so uncomfortable talking about. But if you think that that's going to get you across the finish line, you are sorely mistaken. I've literally had conversations with people, and like about I've had conversations with people about the Russia-Ukraine war, and I have like literally the same person like 10 times. They have literally said, I completely agree with you. Like literally, I am not freaking joking. Like 10 times, I completely agree with you. You are right. And then they go and they watch the news. Oh, Russia bombed this village. Russia's doing that. Putin's Hitler, whatever. Oh, what are they doing? Like, it goes away in an instant. That's just how people are. Okay? That's just how people are. They're not rational. Some people are better than others, but honestly, people like that are more than you think. Okay? So, when in my mind, what a pro-life movement would need is to be constantly pushing anti-feminism, um, constantly critiquing liberalism. What do you think, like, if you're going to be like a libertarian, and freedom this and liberty that, how do you think people get into a place where they're having sex out of wedlock? How do you think people get into a place where they're outside the church and they're not Christian? Ooh, the siren's going off. And they're not Christian and they're doing all this degenerate stuff. How do you think that happens? It's because the church is not a part of society. It's because the church is not a prominent part of the government. And if you're a libertarian, how do you even have any basis for like saying that the church should be a part of the government? Isn't that your whole thing? Is that individuals just do whatever they want? If you're a libertarian, if we have to get people to stop everything to stop being so overly sexualized, because we understand that's moral hazard for sex out of wedlock, which leads to abortion, we gotta ban porn. We have to ban pornography. And again, if you go into any of these libertarian, hug boxes, they'll say that pornography is only bad when it's like, when you're forcing it on kids or whatever. Which is just like, just get these phrases, equality, like, equality, freedom, liberty, just get them out of your mouth. Are you saying that like those things don't matter at all? You're like Hitler? Like, no, dude, I'm saying that when you're in politics, you have to adhere to a certain rhetoric. You have to be pushing a certain worldview. It's not to say that like let's have a religious police up everyone's ass. It's to say that we have to have a doctrine. And again, so many of these pro-life groups, like in my mind, that's like if you had a pro-life group at a university where like it's no secret. I can't believe, like, I even have like back and forth with people about this too. People are just they can never get on the same page about anything. People go to like these precocious like young people who go to these universities and they're on their way to be making a lot of money, and they're going to be part of the elites. They're going to maybe they'll move to America, maybe they're part of people that we want to influence, and they're in these programs, and they're being just constantly lit up with dogma about liberalism and feminism. In my mind, a pro-life group on the campus should be about basically like detoxing that. If a person is like conservative minded, if they're right wing, it shouldn't be this place where like we're gonna just be like pro-life and that's it. We're gonna just be like, life begins at fertilization, and just have this like just bang that drum on and on and on and on and on. I would want a spot where people talk about constantly critiquing liberalism, constantly critiquing feminism, constantly sort of having a vision for the country that's pro-Christian. I can't tell you how many of these pro-life groups say like, well, like, should we really be diving into like the Christianity thing? And these are not groups that have an intention of extending an olive branch. These are groups that like literally like we're having a pro-life get-together. Like, it's not about appealing to moderates. It's not about appealing to liberals. This is a pro-life get-together. And like, I don't know, should we have like should it be like that Christian? Like, we don't want to alienate people. If someone's not a Christian and they're going to like pro-life stuff, maybe they're in the wrong spot. You ever think about that? Maybe we need to actually drop an anchor instead of always, you know, always like having the olive branch. Maybe we need to actually drop an anchor. Maybe we actually need to like have strong convictions on things and actually say things that are provocative. Because if you went up on stage at like a pro-life rally and said like I'm not, it seems like now if you go up on stage and say like, yeah, like I don't support abortion in the instance of sexual assault, there'll be so many people in the crowd being like, oh, I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one. If I went up on stage and said like, yeah, I'm not a liberal, I'm not a feminist, we need to ban porn, we need, women have a special place in a marriage, husband's the head of the household, women have a unique responsibility to take care of children, to love children. That's important. That's in God's design. And the only people that really understand that are socially conservative Christians. And that's who needs to be running our government. And it's unacceptable for non-Christians to be governing Christians. If you said something like that, just no one talks like that. And people wonder why it's been 37 years and Canada still doesn't have an abortion law. Wonder why the religious right in this country is dead. It's a big mystery to these people. So anyway, I'm just going off. It's just so frustrating, man. I don't understand how that isn't just like crystal clear to people. People always want to rein everything in. Why? No, like, let's not be anti-feminist. Like, let's not go that far. Have you seen the state of the country? Why not go that far? Ridiculous. They'll sooner have like conversations about how abortion is like slavery. Abortion is a human rights violation identical to slavery. And like, so like liberals are like the real racists and like we're the real liberals. And I'm going to get in trouble for making fun of that, but I don't care. It's so depressing how like you can see how like things are just like basically just like built to fail. Abortion is like slavery. Dude, what are we doing? You have some of these like crazy old ladies who should be making cookies and like knitting sweaters, but instead they got like a political interest and they're all ginned up on this stupid frickin' movie called the 1916 Project. How cute. The 1619 Project. Our movie's called 1916 Project. Take that, Democrats. They're all ginned up on this movie that says like Margaret Sanger's a racist and all that. Wow. They think that there's a secret Democrat plot to kill all black people because the abortion rate for black people in America is so high and Planned Parenthood targets them. Planned Parenthood targets black people. Seriously, dude? No, don't say that like, yeah, it's probably just the case that like black people have a problem with promiscuity. No, that's obviously not true. If you think that, you're a disgusting racist. It's obviously the fact that like Margaret Sanger said that she doesn't want her what was it, Brownsville, the first birth control clinic that she opened up in New York. It's not the fact that like she wanted to. She legitimately thought that like high fertility rate was causing poverty in these marginalized communities. No, and then when she said that like she didn't want people thinking that they were trying to eradicate the Negro race. That wasn't genuine at all. She was not saying that because she didn't have the Negro Project and hire black doctors and stuff like that, so that the marginalized communities that she wanted to help felt safer in her birth control clinic. No, it's the fact that there's this secret plan to kill all black people by the Democrats. And the Democrats like Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi are in on it. And Obama, all these people that laud Margaret Sanger are in on this secret plot to kill all black people. They're the real racists. I'm not racist, okay? Because I feel so attacked by that. I think that's such a big deal. I'm not the real racist. It's Margaret Sanger. More like Seth Booger. Seth Gruber, more like Seth Booger. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't know. That stuff just drives me crazy. Secret plan to kill all black people. Do you think that that's helping the situation? The problem with them is that they're too promiscuous. They're having too much sex. Have you listened to any of their freaking music? And not to sound racist, but that's just the truth. Sorry. Because that actually, I like, but no, let's do that. Let's, create this, elaborate fantasy about like black people being targeted by Planned Parenthood and like they're being like victimized, they're being controlled to come into the abortion clinic by the evil racist Democrats. That's obviously, let's make our whole movement on this dogma. That's obviously, and if I say that that's obviously just like BS to get black people to vote Republican. The movie itself was funded by TPUSA's Blexit initiative, which is about black people voting Republican. If I say that, I'm a disgusting racist, I'm friendly firing. Again, I made this show so that I don't develop schizophrenia. So yeah. Before this show gets really off the rails, I think I'll end it here. And again, I don't want to make this podcast just like a way to alienate people. I think that we should be compassionate to people. I understand that that's a big thing because there's such a lack of people willing to get involved in the pro-life movement. Excuse me. A lot of people are very forgiving and very like, come one, come all. But, someone's got to be the bad guy. Someone's got to be the one to drop the anchor and say, like, no, you don't belong here if you're voice crack, if you're not properly Christian, if you're saying that abortion is okay. I think you're in the wrong place. So that's my thoughts on it. That's my thoughts on the pro-life stuff. We will definitely revisit that. That'll be a cornerstone of this show. Thank you guys for watching. I think what we'll do is that, especially because we're just getting started here, not a lot of viewers just yet, which is okay. We're just getting started. What we'll do is to sort of have a bit of audience interaction, is that you can leave a comment on the video. Don't use your real name or anything, and don't ask me anything stupid, but yeah, so I think that's what we'll do. You can leave some questions down in the comment section. Tell me what you thought about this episode. Do you agree with me? Do you believe in gender essentialism? I just think that in order for someone to, because I'm not knocking pro-life apologetics at all, I just think in order for someone to cooperate, in order for someone to change their mind, they have to actually cooperate with you. And if their priorities are women's rights and free to choose, I don't think there's much room for cooperation. And it's particularly perturbing how many people in the pro-life movement, it seems that their priorities are closer to women's rights and free to choose than they would like to admit. At least that's just my observation. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. Drop an absolute nuke on that like button. leave a comment and I'll read it next episode. And I think tomorrow I'll do a show on Venezuela. I'll cover what's happening in Latin America. So that should be fun. Yeah, that's all I got for you. Bye for now.